What would happen if you took the world's best footballers and you placed them all in a league outside of Europe? What if that league you chose had a bunch of really weird rules that no one seems to understand? In this football manager experiment, my Twitch community and I did exactly that. 29 MLS teams, each given 3 world-class footballers. This is the recap of the first season of our experiment. This is the MLS Owner Save. Welcome in, everyone. My name is Bizarra, and I will be your guide as we go through our first season of the MLS Owner Save. 29 of my Twitch community members were assigned ownership status to all of the teams in the MLS. With those newfound responsibilities, they were tasked with creating their team through the designated player rules that exist in the MLS. For anyone that does not have an MLS law degree, this essentially means 3 players that have a fixed salary cap number, no matter the cost of their actual contract. The selection criteria was balanced from 3 different player pools based on the player's hidden current ability within the Football Manager database. This was to ensure balance and parity throughout our imaginary league. It was clear that each owner had their own strategy that was inspired by both short and long-term ambitions. It was also interesting to see the types of roster builds and the position of players that were targeted throughout the drafting process. Goalkeeping, for instance, was selected in 3 of the top 4 selections and seemed to be pretty heavily prioritized amongst the owners' picks, while about half of our teams chose to omit a defensive player from their key players altogether. Attacking firepower was the most popular pick, as 27 of our 29 teams selected at least 1 player in an attacking position. Taking a quick look at the current ability numbers of our world-class player draft, Austin FC was deemed to have the best draft based on the underlying attribute numbers, followed closely by Minnesota and Nashville. While on the flip side, Charlotte FC was notably below the other teams, as one of their selections didn't even qualify as a DP under the MLS built-in contract criteria in the editor. Dele Alli out here looking to prove the doubters wrong for Anders Rune in the crown.
You can do it!
For the sake of the video's length, we won't do a detailed breakdown of every team, but if you are interested in taking a closer look at the roster construction, I'd encourage you to check out our Owner Save Discord, where you'll find tons of information about the team's roster construction and the save file itself. Some other interesting storylines before we kick off the inaugural season consisted of what the AI GMs were cooking up in the preseason, as trades and transfers were in the hands of the computer GMs once the season began its simulation. Some moves may make some of the owners want to smash their monitors, but there were some savvy moves I'd like to highlight. The most notable signings were former designated players Denny Bouanga and Emil Forsberg. Bouanga, the Gabon international, signed as a free agent with Orlando City, while Forsberg restructured his contract and stayed with the New York Red Bulls. With team construction squared away, we went to the almighty FM season preview to see what the computer thinks is the likeliest outcome based on our created rosters. Inter Miami is the computer's preseason favorite. Non-designated players like Alba, Suarez, and Busquets make Miami a strong contender, but will Miami be there at year's end? We will have to wait and see. As we zero in on the MLS regular season opener, let's take a look at how the season schedule shapes up for our MLS owners. The competitions listed are in order of when each competition finishes throughout the season. We will feature matches from all of these listed competitions as we journey through the first season of the Owner Save. We have made our way through the preseason, and the MLS regular season has finally arrived. Our MLS season opener saw our highest rated team according to the CA chart, Bendover's Austin FC squad, versus Lionel Messi and Brother Biz's Houston Dynamo. Home debuts for Courtois, De Jong, and Vlahovic for Austin, while Houston trots out Mitrovic, Messi, and Militao in this one. We join in the 43rd minute as Frankie de Jong times a beautiful and instinctive ball over the top of the backline, and Joan Valencia converts to put Austin up early 1-0. In a fairly quiet first half, Austin scored with really their only quality chance and had the lead going into halftime. The second half was a different story, as a turnover led to a Houston equalizer being smashed into the far post side netting by Alexander Mitrovic for his first of the season. The tempo was beginning to pick up a bit now, and the Mitrovic goal led to a change in momentum. The 77th minute saw Houston add to that lead, and it was who else but Lionel Messi causing chaos down the right side flank and eventually getting pulled down in the box. Some late Messi magic saw Houston convert from the penalty spot to take the lead. Houston's newfound grasp on the game was hurdled late. After some Austin possession, a long ball switch was redirected to Austin's Yadier O'Brien, who headed home an equalizer in the 88th minute to send both teams home with a point to open the regular seasons. An even contest overall, and a good appetizer of the drama that's yet to come. Let's go around the horn for the other opening weekend results throughout the MLS. It was was a good day to be a road team as we saw only 5 teams come away with 3 points at home, while the league showed the existing parity as no match was decided by more than 2 goals in match day number 1. With the first match week now finished, let's fast forward a bit to see which teams are trending in the right direction and which teams have dug themselves an early hole after the first month of matches. After the 1 month fast forward, there are 4 teams that had initially pulled away from the pack. Instead of pointing this out through the league table, I have, for the sake of this video, put together an incredibly complex power rankings graph for your viewing pleasure. The Galaxy Brain category is reserved for only what I have deemed the best teams at that point in the competition. Currently, this is comprised of our 4 teams that started with 5 wins in the month of March, while the Dumpster Fire category is reserved for our teams that have some work to do as the season progresses.
Boo! You stink!
Let's take a look at the Golden Boot race, which highlighted some of the top strikers in the league. Erling Haaland and Lautaro Martinez led the way as the only strikers to cross the 5-goal mark for the month, but it was American striker Jeremy Ebobisse that was the surprise inclusion to this list. Playing the role of super sub for the Earthquakes, he was logging a goal every 23 minutes just a month into the season. He joins his teammate Karim Benzema at the top of the scoring chart and undoubtedly contributing to the surprise start for Amin's San Jose squad. Can't talk about goal scorers without the players pulling the strings. There was one name that needed to be highlighted for our first month of the season. Nicolo Barella sits at the top of the assist leaderboard, and the Italian designated player has been absolutely abusing the league thus far as he pulls the strings within the midfield. The assist tallies are great and he leads the league in that category, but it's the 27 key passes for me that is such a staggering and unbelievable number at this point of the season that I felt it needed to be highlighted. With our key contributors now highlighted, the MLS regular season will take a temporary back seat, but will be our home station going forward. We will periodically check in month to month as the season continues in the background as we track the progress of the other various competitions throughout the MLS League year. Having said that, this is a good time to transition to the first rounds of our Cup competitions in the MLS. The month of April means the start of the US Open Cup, the first and only domestic cup within the United States soccer landscape. The Open Cup is akin to European Cup competitions and is the oldest national cup competition in the United States. MLS teams find themselves joining the competition in rounds 3 and 4, and winning the competition books your team a ticket to the CONCACAF Champions Cup, otherwise known as the North American Champions League. Taking a look at the third round draw, about half of our MLS teams have been assigned an opponent. Their opponents at this stage are typically lower league and amateur American teams who have progressed from the early stages of the Open Cup qualifiers. Some MLS teams are omitted from this stage of the draw altogether, and the draw itself is based on the previous season standings, with any undrawn MLS teams receiving a bye until the round of 32. Recapping round 3 of the competition, we saw a few cup sets that were notable amongst our competitors. With New England dropping their third round game against the Richmond Kickers, a USL League One team, which would be considered the third division of American soccer. Colorado narrowly escaped a tight contest with Memphis 901, a USL Championship side that managed to bring the game to extra time before a Cole Bassett brace after Colorado went down to 10 men prevented a big time upset. The Chicago Fire also saw themselves out of the competition early as Monterey Bay managed to hold a clean sheet and extinguish the fire 1-0. All other MLS representatives managed to escape unscathed and will be a part of the round of 32 draw. The round 4 draw saw 8 non-MLS participants still remaining. This included a tasty matchup between lower league underdogs Phoenix Rising and Loudoun United. While the MLS matchups featured 2 of the top frontrunners in the Supporter Shield standings, as Inter Miami hosted the early season surprise San Jose Earthquakes. While we saw one of the most recognizable rivalries in MLS's El Tráfico drawn into the queue, as Quantify's LA Galaxy would play host to Iron Man's LAFC. Round 4 opened with some narrow wins on day 1, but it was Anderson Julio's late extra time equalizer for RSL that was enough to get them to penalties and narrowly escape an early exit to MLS Assassins Monterey Bay, who had already disposed of the Fire in the previous round. It was Inter Miami who flexed their muscle over San Jose, cruising to a 3-0 win, while LAFC took home bragging rights in El Tráfico with their 2-0 win in Carson, California. It was the round 4 cup set that turned some heads on day 2 as the Sounders' Open Cup hopes were dashed by a 90th minute winner by USL side San Antonio. 4 wins is all that stands in the way of the 14 remaining owners in their first domestic trophy and Champions League berth when we return for the round of 16. Circling back to the MLS Supporter Shield battle, we take a look at some teams' ascent as they climb the standings, while other teams' tough Aprils have resulted in them tumbling down the table. The Eastern Conference standings remain controlled by Big Man on Campus's Columbus Crew, who have a very comfy 2-game cushion on Adam Zero's FC Cincinnati, who currently sit in second place on 21 points. While the Western Conference is being steamrolled, and I mean steamrolled, by Amin San Jose, who sits on 28 points through 11 games. Despite a few games in hand, the 10-point cushion this early in the season is really unheard of. The May Power Rankings illustrate some of the movement within the regular season table. Cincinnati joins the MLS Elite at the top of the table's Galaxy Brain category, while Houston and Orlando both find themselves in a playoff spot after a slow start. It was the Galaxy and Portland's poor April that saw them fall outside of the playoff spots, and New York City FC has joined what we have dubbed the early season dumpster fires at the bottom of the table. Just 3 months into the season, when we had our first pair of sackings from our AI boards, Lionel Scaloni of NYCFC was the first head coach dismissed after managing only 1 win in 11 games, including a US Open Cup defeat to an equally anemic Charlotte FC team. While Roberto Mancini was sacked by Toronto FC, which may be a little bit of a surprise as Toronto sits only 2 points out of a playoff spot currently. With a head coaching vacancy now at the front of the list for Toronto, they wasted no time in hiring Juan Reynoso. Reynoso was most recently managing his native Peruvian national team prior to agreeing to terms, but comes to Toronto with successful North American managing experience as he won Liga MX with Cruz Azul just 3 years ago in 2021. The calendar has brought us to round 5 of the US Open Cup, better known as the round of 16. Of those 16 teams, 14 of them are comprised of MLS squads. 4 wins stand between our owners that still remain and a chance to punch their ticket to the Champions League to start season 2. 2 of our owners drew matchups against the Cinderellas of the competition, as LAFC draws the giant killer Loudoun United, while St. Louis City heads down to the Alamo City to take on San Antonio. Charlotte and Minnesota headline the underachievers that are looking to save a forgettable league campaign with a cup run, while Inter Miami, Nashville, Cincinnati, and LAFC all look to continue their hot runs of form. Day 1 of round 5 saw 3 road teams come away with results, and the only home team to defend home field was not me's Colorado Rapids that were fueled by an Art Team Dovbeck hat trick. Day 2 saw maybe our biggest surprise of the tournament thus far as Loudoun United defeated heavily favored LAFC 2-1 to cement their spot in the quarterfinals, which also guaranteed their finish as the best lower league representative for this year's Open Cup. We have whittled the teams down to just 7 MLS owners and 1 plucky lower league squad that refuses to lose. The quarterfinals await as we head into next month, just 3 wins away from one of our owners hoisting their first trophy. We have hit the halfway point of the regular season schedule, and before we check on the table, we need to address something more ominous that is going on as the save progresses. Something we are going to deem the Summer of Sackings. It's true, the AI boards have made this summer feel a little bit like a horror movie, picking off coaches one by one. Well, sadly, I have another one to report. Gareth Southgate, manager of BC Just Cook CF Montreal, was relieved of duty on the final day of May, as Montreal has had a dismal showing thus far in all competitions. Southgate is the 3rd manager let go, and take it from me, the guy that simmed the season and edited the video, it won't be the last. This is a perfect segue into us collectively taking a look at the table at the midpoint of the season as we hit June 1st in Season 1. A few notable storylines since we last checked in would be our upward and downward trends within the Owner Save Power Rankings. Core and Seattle Sounders have jumped into a playoff spot, while FM Tommy's New York Red Bulls have taken the season by the horns and have jumped to first in the Eastern Conference. Now the bad news. The Western Conference standings brings us 2 teams that struggled in May. Literally Batman's Real Salt Lake squad and Quantify's LA Galaxy were on a free-fall trajectory over the last month. These results have dragged them to the bottom of the Western Conference. With all these results lacking some of the in-game context that we are saving for the pivotal games towards the ends of the season, some of you may be asking, how did we get here? Is my team healthy? Well, I had the same thought, and it was something that I was careful to document throughout the season. I want to keep my eyes peeled for key players that were missing that may have been influencing some of the results for our owners. At the start of June, Kellen's Minnesota United led the league with 8 injuries, including their central midfield being absolutely decimated by injury, which goes hand in hand with their league performance thus far for this year. While the biggest players missing from squads included Sporting Kansas City's Gabriel Martinelli, DC United's Jordan Pickford, Real Salt Lake's Julian Alvarez, Austin FC's Dusan Vlahovic, and San Jose's Antoine Griezmann. There were a few teams on the lighter side of injuries, but it was Atlanta United who had maneuvered through the injury bug and was the only team with a clean bill of health at this point in June. Your Golden Boot leaders gave us some fun storylines going into the summer as Cristiano Ronaldo challenges Erling Haaland for the Golden Boot lead at the midpoint of the season. NYCFC drew the short straw as the final pick of the owner-saved draft, but Zapolo Bionico's decision to take a chance on Mr. Ronaldo has thus far panned out in the stats category as NYCFC sits 3 points out of a playoff position. June also means the US Open Cup quarterfinals get back underway as 7 owners and 1 lower league team go head-to-head for the American Continental title. Loudoun United continued their peskiness until the end, but it was a late Tim Parker header that was enough to send St. Louis City through to their first US Open Cup semifinal in club history. Sadly, this knocks out our biggest Cinderella story to date, so how about a small round of applause for Loudoun United? Truly deserved for making it this far in the competition. And we should also highlight Giannis Learman with the red card in the 51st minute. Loudoun United supporters, say it with me in unison.
You blew it!
Colorado and Minnesota United were next, and this was a tale of 2 very different seasons, with Colorado looking poised for a playoff run in the West, while Minnesota has occupied the cellar for much of the season. A very interesting thing happened in this game, which I realized after recording. Luis Muriel, a former real-life designated player, had signed suddenly with Colorado in a non-DP roster slot, and he went on to score 3 goals and send Colorado through with a 71st minute penalty, knocking out an extremely injury-riddled Minnesota squad. And to be fair, Harry Kane was on the squad, so it was bound to happen sooner or later. Our third match was Houston hosting FC Cincinnati, and it was Big Meech, that's what I call him anyway, Alexander Mitrovic with the 75th minute thunderstrike, putting Houston into the semifinals and sending Cincy home to eat more Skyline chili. This is a solid reference, and if you aren't from the States, I would encourage you to look up what Skyline chili is. Here's a picture of it. Lastly, in our final quarterfinal bout, we had Nashville versus Charlotte FC, and despite an incredible performance from Charlotte as a team, it was shoddy goalkeeping by David Bingham in the end that let them down, as his 5.5 match rating and 1 save on 4 shots on target just isn't going to cut it in a matchup against a Holland and Yoyakora striking partnership. This sets up a bout between our remaining 4 MLS owners. 3 of these teams have never won a US Open Cup before in their team's history, and only 2 of these franchises have ever made an Open Cup Finals appearance. Our matchups will be Not Me's Colorado Rapids, who will take on Super CJ Man's St. Louis City squad, while Bad Smurfs Nashville SC will host Brother Biz's Houston Dynamo. The Open Cup semifinal will have to be put on hold until August, though, because July brings the regular season pause for the Leagues Cup, a new competition within the MLS landscape. Leagues Cup format is a pool play that funnels into a knockout format and incorporates all teams from both MLS and Liga MX. All teams will be drawn into groups of 3, similar to what you see in this example. Each team drawn in these groups will play all teams in their group just once, and the 2 highest point tallies advance to the knockout rounds. Teams receive 3 points for a regulation win, 0 points for a loss, with all 90-minute draws going straight to penalties, with the penalty loser receiving 1 point, similar to a draw, and the winner receiving an additional 2nd point to help break a deadlock due to the odd 3-team group sizes. The top 3 teams at the end of the competition receive a Champions League berth, in addition to the Leagues Cup being awarded to the winner. Our opening match of the Leagues Cup had Honey Badger FM's Vancouver Whitecaps hosting a CPU-ran Club America, with the 3rd group representative, literally Batman's Real Salt Lake side, Idle. Vancouver boasts the services of Dominic Calvert-Lewin leading their line and goalkeeper Allison between the sticks. Antonio Conte and Vancouver sit in the middle of the playoff spots in the Western Conference, but have suffered a setback as center back Antonio Rudiger suffered a season-ending injury just a few weeks prior. With the proactive decision to focus a lot of our gameplay highlights to the more meaningful games at season's end, I was hoping for some electrifying offense in our first match of the Leagues Cup. It appears neither team got the memo, as a rather listless attacking performance from both teams resulted in us joining late in the second half, as Vancouver held the advantage on XG pretty handedly. An 86-minute free kick by Veselinovic goes over the bar, and the game comes to a halt at 0-0. Penalties would have to decide this one. It was the Vancouver designated players that stepped up to the plate early in the penalty kick shootout, as Allison was able to parry away a Julian Quinones blast, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin calmly picked a side to give Vancouver the early advantage. A back-and-forth affair in penalties was finally put to rest as MLS journeyman Fafa Picoult smashes a winner past Malagone to take game number 1 in the group and 2 points home for the Caps. Let's take a look at some other results after match day number 1 in Leagues Cup. Seattle dropped their opener to Liga MX side Tijuana, while Quantify's LA Galaxy were able to knock off Atletico San Luis 1-0. In our lone head-to-head amongst owners in the first 5 groups, CG1's Inter Miami knocked off CAD's DC United 2-1. All 4 road teams won in groups 5 through 8 as Cincinnati, Columbus, and Charlotte all started out with W's in group play, while St. Louis City was able to pull at least a point in penalties in a loss to Santos Laguna. Montreal, Philly, New York, and Orlando City pulled a clean MLS sweep in groups 9 through 12 as New England was the only MLS squad to lose 2-0 to the Union. And lastly, Austin FC beat a very talented Monterrey team 1-0 after a Dusan Vlahovic winner right before the half. While San Jose's start to Leagues Cup wasn't nearly as hot as their start to the league, dropping their opener to Chivas 1-0. After the conclusion of the second matches, we rejoin the Leagues Cup for Decision Day. Match Day 3 will be the decider for many of our owners on who will advance to the round of 32 knockout and who will head home for a short summer vacation prior to the league schedule resuming. Some teams were able to take care of business prior to Match Day number 3 and had already celebrated the fact that they had clinched the round of 32 after just 2 games. 17 teams in total had done enough to qualify, consisting of these 11 MLS owners and 6 Mexican League AI teams punching their tickets. On the flip side, some Leagues Cup campaigns have crashed and burned, as 2 of our owners' teams, CAD's DC United and Pixelated Suits' New England Revolution, have taken an early summer vacation as they await MLS regular season league play to resume after being eliminated after 2 games. Any teams not mentioned on our Leagues Cup graphics were still in play for the round of 32. This included our first featured game of Decision Day. The Cascadia Cup, one of MLS's biggest rivalries, was the canvas for a win-and-in battle between Tayrax's Portland Timbers and Corin's Seattle Sounders. The Cascadia Cup boasts a rare thing in a rivalry within the MLS: tradition. These 2 teams have played over 100 times dating back to their days in the NASL, with their first matchup taking them back all the way to 1975. In this matchup, the stakes are high as both teams lost their opening match in regulation to Tijuana, and with penalty kicks looming with any ties at the end of regulation, we could be due for a spicy fixture between the 2 Northwest rivals. One notable heading into the game was manager Hansi Flick being sacked by Portland due to their poor performances heading into the summer break. Another casualty to our Summer of Sackings horror movie that seems to continue here throughout Season 1 of the MLS Owner Save. MLS veteran manager Greg Vanney, who has 2 MLS Cups to his name with 2 different teams, was the selection by the Portland board to take the managerial duties over for the remainder of the season. Portland lines up in a 4-4-2 with Nkunku and Guirassy manning the front line, while Bruno Fernandes pulls the strings from the midfield. While Xavi Alonso's Sounders line up in a 5-2-2-1 with a front 3 of Ramos, Bellingham, and Christian Pulisic. Portland grabbed the match momentum late in the first half as an in-swinging free kick to the back post from the near side corner area found the head of Eric Miller to give the Timbers a lead heading into halftime. Seattle started to chip away at that momentum, but were having a hard time getting any solid chances on frame to challenge Ivicic, the Portland keeper. That was until the 95th minute when Christian Pulisic guided a pass from the byline that resulted in a Sounder player being taken down in the box and suddenly a chance to keep their Leagues Cup hopes alive and send this game to penalties. Jude Bellingham stepped up to take the Sounders' most important penalty of the season, and he smashes it home to give the Sounders life and send this thing to penalty kicks. The Sounders' momentum carried over into PKs as Nkunku was the first penalty taker to slip up in the 3rd spot for Portland. This led to John Bell, who stepped up with a chance to send Seattle through, but he was denied by Ivicic to send this shootout to sudden death. 8 shooters in, and it was rolled on to put Seattle back in front, but a huge Brad Stuver save denied Mosquera and the Timbers a chance at a Leagues Cup knockout berth. The round of 32 spot belonged to Seattle, but more importantly, the bragging rights for the Cascadia Cup goes to the Sounders supporters. Seattle is joined in the round of 32 by Toluca, Club America, and Honey Badger FM's Vancouver Whitecaps, and this eliminates Tayrax's Portland Timbers, Literally Batman's Real Salt Lake, CAD's DC United, and Atletico San Luis. With the first 4 groups decided, that brings us to groups 5 through 8 of the Leagues Cup. These groups were a little less cloudy going into the final day than the first 4 groups, but an intriguing win-and-in situation between Super CJ Man's St. Louis City and Kellen's Minnesota United squad is where we shift our attention to for our second final group stage matchup. St. Louis City was playing without their key creator in Bernardo Silva, who was out with an injury, and they struggled to consistently break down Minnesota's backline that consisted of 2 of their 3 designated players in Bastoni and Saliba. Minnesota benefited from that missing creative spark and was on the front foot for much of the game. They benefited from a Halangwani effort play in the 68th minute that resulted in a cross to the foot of Harry Kane to give the Loons a 1-0 lead. The stout Minnesota United defense paired with a Harry Kane second-half goal was enough to do away with St. Louis City, who was eliminated from the competition. Cincinnati, Colorado, Sporting KC, Charlotte, and Nashville all will join Minnesota in the round of 32, with Kansas City being the only other team in a win-and-in situation in their final group stage match. Atlas and St. Louis City are added to the League's Cup casualty list and will head back home to away regular season play to start back up again. Philly and Orlando City punched their first-place spots in groups, while Toronto knocked out Montreal in the Canadian Classique with a regulation win to punch their ticket into the next round of Leagues Cup with a 3-1 win fueled by a Jordan Peraza brace. Leaving just 2 groups remaining to close out group play of the Leagues Cup. San Jose versus FC Dallas was a win-and-in situation as both opened their Leagues Cup campaign losing to group winner Chivas Guadalajara in the first matches. San Jose has had a stellar regular season campaign as they currently lead the Western Conference, and they are hoping to continue the run of form against a feisty Dallas side who is fully healthy as Florian Wirtz rejoins the starting 11. San Jose wasted little time with getting on the score sheet as a direct pass from Dallas's backline was intercepted and pushed with tempo up the right flank. Carlos Acapo plays a killer cross, finding the head of Karim Benzema, who tucks in a styled header to put the Quakes up 1-0 to start things in this one. The run of play continued to be controlled by San Jose as we joined some build-up in the 36th minute. Some wonderful combination play on the flank between Kemar Lawrence and Antoine Griezmann eventually leads to a lofted cross that is cashed in coolly by Nico Williams to give San Jose a 2-0 lead. Just before halftime hits, Dallas was doing their best to hang on, but a headed back post corner resulted in a back-breaking third goal for San Jose going into the half. The halftime speech lit a fire under the Dallas players and they came out motivated, pulling back a goal to cut the lead 3-1. San Jose felt a bit of pressure from the change in scoreline, but wasted little time putting in a fourth as Nico Williams notched his second of the day to put San Jose up 4-1. Dallas refused to go away as Mo Salah hit a deep strike to cut the lead to just 2 and keeping Dallas's slim chance at knockouts alive. San Jose's firm grip of the game suddenly felt like it was starting to slip, and the regular season leader in player rating Mo Salah was largely responsible. Seemingly every attack was started through him and Florian Wirtz, and it was that duo who had pulled back another goal for Dallas. And unbelievably, they trailed by just 1 after being down 3-0 at half. The 93rd minute allowed San Jose to exhale and cheer simultaneously as Antoine Griezmann drained a free kick from 25 yards out to ice the game and give San Jose a 5-3 win. One of the most memorable games in the group phases, but sadly, only one of these teams are able to move on. This concludes the group stage and finalizes the bracket for the knockout rounds. 20 of our owners still remain in the 32-team field, with the top 3 teams punching their ticket to the North American Champions Cup in Season 2. Our featured game in the round of 32 is a matchup between 2 group stage winners as the tournament favorite CG Wands Inter Miami hosts Honey Badger FM's Vancouver Whitecaps. In a fairly quiet first half, the best chance came from a Jordi Alba's set-piece delivery that Sergio Busquets sent off the side netting. Scoreless first half between the teams as the crowd in Fort Lauderdale grew restless for one of these teams to break the deadlock. The second half remained relatively uneventful until a Sergio Busquets push into the back of Dominic Calvert-Lewin gave Vancouver a chance to take the lead at the penalty spot. Damir Kryler smashed home the penalty to give Vancouver a shocking 1-0 lead late in the second half. In the dying seconds, Vancouver was able to drive the ball forward to kill the clock, doing just enough to pull the upset against Inter Miami. It's a huge result for Honey Badger FM as Vancouver makes their way into the round of 16. A field of 11 MLS owners still remained, including our featured round of 16 matchup between the Colorado Rapids and the Columbus Crew. Not Me's Colorado Rapids hosted Big Man on Campus's Columbus Crew, with both teams boasting a solid start to their league years. Both teams went into this at full strength with the exception of Colorado missing designated player Artem Dovbek for match fitness reasons. It didn't take long for the first notable highlight in this one as Sam Vines whipped in an in-swinging cross to the head of Sergei Milinkovic-Savic, who thumped a header past the Columbus keeper to give Colorado an early 1-0 lead. In the 29th minute, Colorado extended that lead, this time from the other corner flag, with Loffelson whipping in a corner for the Polish painter Robert Lewandowski, who paints the back of the net with a header to double the Colorado lead. 2-0 was where we stood at halftime, but Columbus made things interesting when Sean Zawatsky pulled back a goal off a short free kick, which was quickly worked past a sleeping defense to make it 2-1. It ultimately wasn't enough as Colorado was able to outlast the late Columbus surge to move on to the quarterfinals. Just 8 teams remained, and Liga MX showed that it wouldn't go down easily as it spoiled the party for several of our MLS sides that were trying to punch their ticket to the quarterfinals. Our quarterfinal looked like this as 4 MLS teams went head-to-head with 4 Liga MX sides. A win in the quarterfinals is a pivotal moment for these teams, as it gives you 2 separate opportunities to qualify for the Champions League in the semifinal round, as the loser of the semifinals will play in the 3rd place match in a win-in scenario for a spot in the NACC, giving each semifinal representative a 3 and 4 chance of clinching a spot. In our first quarterfinal, it was Honey Badger FM's Vancouver continuing their Leagues Cup run as Dominic Calvert-Lewin put the Whitecaps ahead early with a headed effort in the 15th minute. The Canadian side never looked back and punched their ticket into the League Cup semis, disposing of the Liga MX favorite Club America 1-0. Quarterfinal number 2 was a back and forth affair between Liga MX side Santos Laguna and Not Me's Colorado Rapids. Ultimately, the result went to Colorado as an R-Team Dovbeck brace silenced the Santos supporters in a 3-2 win. We had a defensive stalemate in quarterfinal number 3, settled by a Zandy Silva winner to give Liberty's Atlanta United a 1-0 win and a spot in the semifinals. Our final quarterfinal matchup saw Supernova's Orlando City do just enough to edge out FC Juarez. Jack Lynn, a product of the MLS Super Draft, scored a 73rd minute winner to send Orlando City through as the final representative to the Leagues Cup semifinals. All 4 Liga MX teams were defeated in the quarterfinals, leaving 2 head-to-head matchups between our MLS owners. All 4 teams have run the gauntlet to get to this point, but which team can continue to push forward to be our first of our owners to clinch continental soccer? Will it be Honey Badger FM's Vancouver Whitecaps, who have ran a marathon to get here, but are doing so without Antonio Rudiger, one of their designated players who is out with a season-ending knee injury? Or how about Liberty's Atlanta United, whose entire identity has been built around their defense, as all 3 designated players are either defenders or goalkeepers? Or how about Not Me's Colorado Rapids, who have been notably formidable in cup competitions, but the remainder of their run will have to continue without Robert Lewandowski, who was injured during the week in training? Or what about Supernova's Orlando City, a team built for the counter, defensively solid, and team speed that will kill? Semifinal number 1 pits Honey Badger FM versus Liberty as we head to BC Place in Vancouver. The story of this one for the Vancouver Whitecaps was the brutal news that dropped before the game, as both of their 2 healthy designated players were injured in training leading up to the semifinal. This leaves Vancouver with no current designated players healthy. Atlanta, on the other hand, trots out a fully healthy roster and will look to their staunch backline to be the catalyst in their quest for a Leagues Cup final. With the odds being stacked against Vancouver, naturally, they would take a 1-0 lead on a nice run of play down the left flank that eventually saw Fafa Picoult tuck in a finesse shot into the side netting. Vancouver's lead was short-lived. Atlanta took the ensuing kickoff and quickly navigated down the field, eventually finding Derek Etnian Jr., who quickly equalized to put the game back to a deadlock at 1-1. The score remained 1-1 at halftime, with both shots on target resulting in goals. The second half left all supporters on the edge of their seats as the tie remained. The 70th minute saw a chance spring from some Atlanta United buildup as Bartosz Slits found Saba Lobjanidze, who fired a shot that was caught by the Vancouver keeper. This was the best chance for the remainder of regulation, and the game ultimately couldn't find a winner before full time. This sent us to the dreaded penalty kick shootout. The shootout remained tied throughout the first 5 kickers, and it sent us to sudden death where Tristan Blackman stepped up for the Whitecaps, but it was Gianluigi Donnarumma stepping up big for Atlanta United, giving the Five Stripes an opportunity to win it with their next kick. It was all on the shoulders of Danny Pereira, who was subbed on in regulation to be the hero. He picked his spot and thumped a driven shot low and hard into the corner, and Atlanta United clinches not only a berth to the Leagues Cup final, but they become our first team in the North American Champions Cup field for next season. With our first member of the NACC decided, we had 2 other teams vying for the Champions Cup berth. Our second semifinal was a matchup between Supernova's Orlando City and Not Me's Colorado Rapids. Injuries had been the theme in these semifinals, and they had sadly spread throughout the Colorado team, similarly to how they did with Vancouver in the week leading up to their semifinal match, with only our team Dovbeck available for the Colorado Rapids in this one. The first half was incredibly quiet, with just 2 shots on target combined between the 2 teams. The second half saw our first big chance as a Colorado free kick opportunistically bounced out to Marcus Rashford, who was off to the races down the left flank. Being chased down by multiple Rapids defenders, a right-footed strike from just inside the box flew past Zach Steffen to give Orlando City the lead. The 63rd minute saw Orlando City starting to take control of the game as some patient build-up through the back from the right flank to the left ultimately found its way from Alphonso Davies to Denny Bouanga, who gave Orlando an extra goal cushion with the tap-in. Congratulations to Supernovas Orlando City, who is our second team to clinch a Champions League spot and will host Liberty's Atlanta United in the final, while Vancouver and Colorado will go head-to-head vying for that final Champions League spot in the third place game. The Leagues Cup final was finally here, and no, we didn't have any notable high-profile halftime performances. What we did have was two teams with very different roster builds that are going head-to-head for their chance to take home the first trophy of our MLS owner save. The first team was Liberty's Atlanta United, a team built on defense that has relied on its other MLS pieces to take on the scoring responsibilities. While team number 2 was Supernovas Orlando City, a team with a more balanced build that has balanced its world-class players on multiple levels of the pitch. First things first, I was going to show some more extensive highlights in this game, being that it was a final, but this was an incredibly sleepy final through regulation. I'm currently showing you the only highlight shown to me on key highlights through the entire 90 minutes. Seriously, that's all the game gave me. So that brings us to extra time, and the 113th minute finally brought some fireworks. A free kick created defensive chaos as the ball pinballed around, finally reaching Marcus Rashford, who headed it home at the far post. He was able to beat the Atlanta defense and keeper, and Orlando City was suddenly on top in the dying minutes. Atlanta United's final chance in the 117th minute was not enough as Brooks Lennon drove a shot high. Pedro Galese, the Orlando City keeper, was able to hang on to it, and Supernovas Orlando City becomes the first ever MLS Owner Save trophy winners as they have been crowned your Leagues Cup champions. This win also grants a bye into the round of 16 of the North American Champions Cup. Congratulations to Supernova and his team, well deserved. We can't forget about our third place matchup as a Champions League berth was on the line. The result went the way of not me and the Colorado Rapids, who are our final team to clinch a Champions League spot from the Leagues Cup. Milinkovic-Savic got the scoring started in the 62nd minute, and the young American Cole Bassett added a second in the 71st minute. This concludes our month-long pause of Leagues Cup and shifts our focus back to the MLS regular season as we have a sprint to the finish with only about 2 months of the calendar left before the MLS playoffs start up. Shifting our focus back to league play, let's take a look at the playoff race and who was selected to the MLS All-Star Game as we return from our Leagues Cup vacation. Starting with the Western Conference, San Jose leads the way in both the conference and the Supporter Shield race, as they have for most of the season. Their points total has been cut fairly significantly from the last time we checked, mainly by Birch's Sporting Kansas City and Ironman's LAFC. While in the Eastern Conference, the Red Bulls have asserted their dominance in the middle portion of the schedule and rose to prominence over the summer. Fueled by the attacking dominance of Saka and Isak, they are just a point back from a tie in the Supporter Shield race. For the struggling teams, we are up to 8 total manager sackings, with the most recent being Abel Ferreira of FM Jellicoe's Philadelphia Union. Teams have not been shy to dismiss their managers this season, as over 25% of teams are now being run on an interim basis until our owners can appoint a new manager as designated in the offseason. The MLS All-Star Weekend is here, allowing fans and league representatives to vote and elect deserving candidates based on their performance through the league year to that point, serving as a good indicator on what owners did the best job in Season 1 of assembling their rosters. The All-Star Game has been played against different opponents each season, and over the years, teams have played against a lot of Europe's elite club teams. Recently, there has been a sudden initiative to pit the best from Liga MX in Mexico and their All-Stars to go head-to-head with the best of MLS to help elevate that rivalry with Leagues Cup coming into the fold, and currently serves as the format the league has adopted the last few years. Setting the table with a little bit of context for all of you for the All-Star Weekend, I present to you the MLS All-Stars for Season 1 of the Owner Save. Leading the way was Inter Miami with 3 All-Star selections, while Montreal, Houston, Chicago, and LAFC were the other teams with multiple selections. We also saw 2 non-designated players make the cut, as goalkeeper Hugo Lloris was named to the bench, and Julian Gressel of Inter Miami, who has compiled a heavy assist tally, also makes the bench for Inter Miami. The game was incredibly one-sided this time around, as a goal by Mo Salah and a brace by Kylian Mbappe led the way for the MLS to dominate the Liga MX All-Stars 3-0. We continue to see the movers and shakers as we power through the remainder of the regular season as we reach the midpoint of September. With 6 games remaining, we have officially had our first team clinch the playoffs. Ironman's LAFC have moved from 3rd to 1st after a stellar 7.3 game stretch in the month of September that has jettisoned them up to 1st place. They currently lead the Supporter Shield race by a narrow margin and have been fueled by the combination of Darwin Nunez, Luis Diaz, and Martin Odegaard. We will recap a couple of the very important regular season games down the stretch as as we approach Decision Day with just a few games remaining. But before we do that, I have to bring you all back over for a detour to the US Open Cup as we still have 4 teams remaining as they fight it out for the honor for the first domestic cup win in the owner save. Not Me's Colorado Rapids versus Super CJ Man St. Louis City squad is our first US Open Cup semifinal. Colorado parlays a third-place Leagues Cup result into another deep cup run, while St. Louis City is hoping for cup success to save a mediocre regular season campaign thus far. St. Louis City will also be heading into this one without key man Bernardo Silva. This game was entertaining from the get-go, with 2 goals in the opening 10 minutes for both teams, while Milinkovic-Savic knotted a header home just before the break to give Colorado the advantage heading into half. The second half was a different story, as Colorado jumped on St. Louis early thanks to the semifinal hero Nate Jones, who headed home an early opening goal in the second half to extend the lead. He added to that later in the match to notch a 5th goal to Colorado's tally and clinch the Rapids a spot into the US Open Cup Finals. Those pesky Colorado Rapids do it again. Congratulations to Not Me, who is 2 for 2 so far in deep cup runs as owner. Colorado awaited the winner of our other semifinal of the day, which was played simultaneously, so we could only summarize the chaos that ensued between Brother Biz's Houston Dynamo and Bad Smurfs Nashville SC. Nashville's striking partnership continued their domination, but in the end it was lesser-known MLS youngster Forster Iago who notched the game winner in the 85th minute. Giving Nashville the nod to the US Open Cup final, Messi and Houston are eliminated just 1 game from the final. Commerce City, Colorado played host to our second final of the save. A Champions League berth would typically be on the line, but due to Colorado's third-place Leagues Cup campaign, Nashville is the only team playing to clinch an NACC place. A fight for the first domestic cup in the owner save is on the line. Amarim and Rose deployed mirrored 4-2-2 narrow formations as the whistle blows to get the first final of the owner save underway. A fully healthy lineup for both teams meant neither team was on the back foot out of the gate. Nashville got on the board in the late first half as Yoya Korish knocks in a pinballed cross to put Nashville on top at halftime. The second half lacked some offensive firepower and it was a defensive stalemate. Colorado's lone second half highlight was this wayward Robert Lewandowski shot, but they were never able to break through the Nashville defense. And as we watch the final minutes tick off the clock, Bad Smurfs Nashville SC is your Season 1 US Open Cup champions. Congratulations to Bad Smurf, whose selection of Victor Yoya Korish, Erling Haaland, and Gregor Kobel has proved to be one of the frontrunners for the ultimate prize of the MLS Cup at season's end. The first title of Bad Smurf's ownership tenure here in Nashville will look to carry this title winning momentum into the remainder of the MLS regular season. Nashville's road was impressive, beating 5 fellow MLS owners and 1 USL squad on their championship run. This will also clinch Nashville into next year's North American Champions Cup as they join our other qualifiers from the Leagues Cup. As we transition back to the MLS regular season, we have just 4 games remaining for most teams as the playoff race heats up. We have also seen a few more teams punch their ticket into the MLS Cup playoffs. FM Tommy's New York Red Bulls, CG Gaming's Inter Miami, Adam Zero's FC Cincinnati have clinched on the Eastern Conference side. While on the Western Conference side, Marvelous Birch's Sporting Kansas City and Amin San Jose Earthquakes join the already clinched Western Conference leaders LAFC. With 9 playoff spots in each conference, that leaves just 12 playoff spots total, with 4 regular season games remaining. In those final 4 games, we will be focusing on the teams around the playoff line that have some work to do before they can clinch their spot in the MLS Cup playoffs. Charlotte FC and Austin FC are the first 2 teams to be eliminated from playoff contention, and will have some work to do on figuring out how to turn some things around in Season 2. Charlotte will have the first pick in our world-class player draft, and their gamble on selecting only 2 designated player quality players has proven to fall flat. While Austin FC were without Dusan Vlahovic for about 2 months in total with various injuries, which were racked up over the course of the season, which proved costly in the long run, and an injection of some new talent is desperately needed on this roster. Match Week 31 is bound to unveil a few more teams that will join our first 2 eliminated MLS squads, as Montreal, Minnesota, and Real Salt Lake are in must-win situations going into the final week. While our featured game of the week in Match Week 31 will be between Natu Jakey's FC Dallas and Honey Badger FM's Vancouver. An incredibly important fixture for the playoff picture in the Western Conference, as they occupy both the 6th and 7th place positions in the Western Conference, just 3 points above the playoff line. The first half was a back and forth affair as Dallas took an early lead with a Mo Salah penalty kick. Vancouver equalized shortly after in the 45th minute, as MLS player Javane Brown smacked a Fafa Pico pass past Martin Paez. Dallas didn't waste any time and immediately took back the lead before the break, as Nicola Barella assisted on a Florian Wirtz finesse shot that spun past the Dallas keeper Allison to give Dallas the advantage at the break. The big chance in the second half belonged to Vancouver, who had a chance to equalize from the spot in the 61st minute, but Damir Kreilish was thwarted by Martin Pius, who kept Dallas ahead as the second half time waned. Vancouver's missed opportunity ended up costing them the point, and Dallas was able to leapfrog them in the standings in the West. Montreal's loss to Orlando City eliminates BC Just Cook's Montreal side from playoff contention in the East, while Portland's draw on the road against Houston was enough to eliminate both Kellen's Minnesota and literally Batman's Real Salt Lake sides from playoff contention in the West, leaving the current playoff choice looking like this with just 3 matches remaining. Match day number 32's featured game belongs to the Eastern Conference, which has proven to be much more competitive than the West throughout the first season of the Owner's Save. Zapolo Bionico's 11th place New York City FC squad goes on the road in a huge opportunity to vault themselves over the playoff line. They sit on 41 points, just 2 points behind 9th place Orlando City, while 6th seed Liberty's Atlanta United sits on 44 points, just 1 point over the playoff line as they look to strengthen their hold on a playoff spot in the MLS Cup playoffs with a home 3 points. New York City's freefall in the standings in the past month could be linked to the injury bug, as the leading scorer Cristiano Ronaldo suffered a hernia in September. He should be healthy come playoff time, but New York City's secret weapon is out for the pivotal matchup, and it'll be up to the rest of the squad to step up in his place. Atlanta United wasted little time getting off to a fast start as Saba Labjonidze rifled a shot past Ter Stegen to give Atlanta an early lead. Atlanta wasn't done, and neither was Labjonidze, as he scored his brace just 28 minutes into the game to give all the momentum to the home side. Atlanta left little doubt in this one, as just before the half, Derek Etienne Jr. picked out a beautiful shot to give the Five Stripes the 3-0 lead going into the break. NYCFC was able to pull one back as Jovan Mijatovic tucked a left-footed shot into the far post past Donnarumma, but it wasn't enough as NYCFC's fall in the standings continues and Atlanta United get that much closer to postseason soccer. Before we take a look at the full landscape of results from the week, we had another team eliminated from playoff contention. The playoff line grew too high of a point threshold for the Galaxy, as they are our next team eliminated from playoff contention as we close out match week 32. With the bad news out of the way, let's celebrate some good news in the Owner's Save. We had 2 more teams punch their tickets to the MLS postseason. Out of the Eastern Conference, Bad Smurfs Nashville SC side beat a mentally checked out Montreal side who had already been eliminated from playoff contention. Nashville is currently in line to host their opening round matchup as the 4 seed. While in the West, NAMI's Colorado Rapids not only clinched a playoff spot, but they leapfrogged the already clinched Sporting Kansas City and San Jose to take over the 2nd seed in the West with their win over a desperate Portland side who fell out of the playoffs with that home loss. Colorado also has a game in hand due to a game that had to be rescheduled due to their cup success earlier in the season. Our other most notable mover in match week 32 was St. Louis City, whose road win in Vancouver saw them move from 10th place to 7th, moving in front of Vancouver, Houston, and Portland in the West. Match week number 33 is an East versus West matchup between 2 teams in an absolute must-win situation. With just 2 games left from the MLS playoffs being decided, our featured match takes us to Providence Park, as Tayrax's Portland Timbers host Z's Chicago Fire. This matchup features 2 teams that have their backs up against the wall, and to make matters worse, it's international break in MLS, and some very important players have been forced to leave at one of the most pivotal points of the season. And yes, this does still happen in real life, currently pending on the severity of the international competition scheduled. Gotta love the MLS. The international break hit Portland a little bit harder than Chicago, but both have been affected, as Portland will be without 2 designated players in Bruno Fernandes and Christopher Nkunku, while Chicago will be without center back Kim Min-jae for the duration of the international break. Chris Mueller in Chicago got the scoring started as he lurked inside the box and smashed home an opportunistic failed clearance from the Portland defenders. Chicago leads 1-0. Just 2 minutes later, a second for Chicago as Kolo Muani stamps his presence in the game. 2-0. It took Portland a bit to stabilize, but Guirassy got the host back a goal in the 33rd minute as he heads home a goal Portland was in desperate need of. Portland's momentum was stopped instantaneously as the ensuing kickoff saw Chicago march down the field and Kolo Muani snatch his 2nd goal of the game. Right before halftime, Portland was hanging on for dear life at this point. Another whipped-in corner made its way to the hero of the day for Chicago as Kolo Muani completed his first half hat trick and breaks the back of Portland going into the break. Portland would need to answer fast if they're going to have a chance to get anything out of this match. In the end, it was Kolo Muani who crushed the morale of the Portland squad as he assists to Brian Gutierrez to give the Fire a 5-1 lead and take the 3 points back home with him. This loss is worst case scenario for Portland and finalizes the Western Conference playoffs officially, as Portland is the final casualty in the West. Corin Seattle Sounders, Not Too Jakey's FC Dallas, Super CJ Man St. Louis City, Honey Badger FM's Vancouver Whitecaps, and Brother Biz's Houston Dynamo have all clinched a playoff berth, with the only thing up for interpretation being their playoff seeding in the Western Conference with 1 match week remaining. On the Eastern Conference side of things, Things are a little more complicated. Let's start with the easiest thing to recap first. Big Man on Campus and the Columbus Crew were able to book their ticket to the MLS Cup playoffs with a 1-0 win over Colorado. There are 7 teams still alive in the East fighting for 4 playoff spots. Teams like Orlando, Atlanta, and the New England Revolution hold their own fate in their hands in a win-and-in situation. While teams like Toronto FC will need a win on the road against a favored New York Red Bulls, who are trying to hang on to the top seed in the Eastern Conference, other results would also have to go the way for Toronto FC to clinch. The Chicago Fire are in a similar situation and look to add on to their good run of form from the demolition we just watched in the previous match day. They go on the road against an already eliminated Philadelphia with 3 points an absolute must in order to clinch. They would also need any of the green circled teams above them in the standings to slip up. That leaves just 2 teams that we haven't mentioned in the playoff picture, which brings us to our featured match of the week. Zapolo Bionico's New York City FC sit on 44 points as they host CAD's DC United, who sit on 46 points and sit in the final playoff spot as we speak. It's a featured match day on decision day here in the MLS Owners Save, a win-and-in situation, and we set the table for what is sure to be an incredibly memorable day for these owners. NYCFC lines up under interim manager Rob Vertusian in a 4-4-2 with Cristiano Ronaldo leading the line, while DC United sit in a 4-3-3 as Pep Guardiola goes to war on the final match day with just 2 designated players at his disposal. The missing player in question was Lautaro Martinez, who suffered an injury in the week that will sideline him for the remainder of the season, stacking the odds even more in NYCFC's favor before the game even kicks off. New York City opened the match on the front foot, and an early Anguissa right-footed missile put New York up early, and for now, into a playoff position. At the 33rd minute, DC United was starting to take control of the game in possession. After left winger Pedro Santos rings what would have been an absolute worldie of a shot off the bar, NYCFC was on the run and it was Cristiano Ronaldo off to the races. DC United defender Christopher McVeigh pulls Ronaldo down from behind, and NYCFC and Rob Vertusian go absolutely ballistic on the sidelines, as surely that has to be a red card. The referee's controversial decision saves DC United to continue to play this one at full strength. DC United had rode a few lucky breaks and some opportunistic defensive clearances into only trailing by 1. The 75th minute saw the ball work to speedy frontman Christian Dahome, who dropped a cheeky pass short to Gabriel Pirani, who guides home a shot into the back of the net, and suddenly DC United found themselves back into the playoffs with the score 1-1. Time has dwindled down and we are down to the final chance for New York City as 1 point will not be enough. McFarland plays the ball over the top. Ojeda, and he's going to score. Can you believe that? New York City. Oh no, the flag has come up, and the goal that looked like it was going to send them through has been their undoing with the offside flag coming up. That is all she wrote, and DC United moves on as New York City has their hearts broken. Sadly, like New York City, the following team seasons end here as they fall short of the playoff line in season 1 and look to regroup through the draft for season 2. Decision day has concluded, and that has finalized the playoff setup for the conclusion of season 1 in the Owner Save. What an absolutely thrilling finish to the regular season, and it just shows how thin these margins are for these playoff spots in each conference. Before we unveil the playoff teams, let's give some of the top teams their flowers. Iron Man's LAFC is your Supporter Shield standings winner for the first season of the Owner Save. This impressive accomplishment has earned LAFC a berth in the North American Champions Cup. As for the other North American Champions Cup spots, the finish of the MLS regular season rounds out all of the MLS representatives in the NACC, with the exception of one more spot being awarded to the winner of the MLS Cup at the end of the playoffs. Congratulations to Adam Zero, FM Tommy, and Amin NYC, as your squads join the other 5 teams currently qualified for the Champions Cup from the MLS to start next season. CG Juan's Inter Miami is also listed, as they are the team in waiting that would benefit from any of the teams with an MLS emblem next to their name winning the MLS Cup. Now let's meet our clinched playoff teams as we conclude the final match week of the MLS regular season. The opportunities were there on decision day for some chaos to ensue, but many teams did not take advantage of their opportunities that were presented. Orlando City took care of business against an already eliminated Montreal side, clinching a spot. Outside of that, DC United was the only team that got a result where it was needed in our featured matchup. The rest of the teams playing all lost, and Pixelated Suits' New England Revolution and Liberty's Atlanta United limp into the playoffs despite losing their final match and being vulnerable to be overtaken in the standings by Chicago and Toronto. Ultimately, it wasn't to be, as Chicago loses to an already eliminated Philadelphia Union side, and Toronto couldn't pull a result against the top team in in the East, the New York Red Bulls. Here is the 9 teams that have clinched the playoffs for both conferences. Looking at the Western Conference, Vancouver vaulted out of the play-in game with their win in the final match week, while in the Eastern Conference, DC United's point moved them up to the 7th seed, also avoiding the play-in game, while Columbus was able to hold on to home field advantage in round 1, edging out Nashville for the 4 seed. In order to get the full playoff picture, we have one final step before we have the finalized fields of teams in both conferences. The MLS has what is called a play-in game, a single elimination match where the 8th seed in each conference plays host to the 9th place team in a one-game winner-take-all matchup to have the right to move to the first round of the MLS Cup playoffs. On the Eastern Conference side, we have Liberty's Atlanta United, who is no stranger to some important back-against-the-wall fixtures this year with their performances in the Leagues Cup. They will be hosting Pixelated Suits' New England Revolution. The Western Conference matchup will be Brother Biz's Houston Dynamo hosting Super CJ Man St. Louis City side, with the winner being matched up in a best-of-3 series with the Supporter Shield winners, LAFC. We will start in Atlanta in our first winner-take-all wildcard matchup. Both teams are fully fit as Atlanta United runs their all-MLS attacking trio in a 4-3-3, while Carlo Ancelotti's New England Revolution goes with a narrow diamond midfield. Just 7 minutes in, and it's Saba Labzanidze, whose fantastic year for Atlanta continues as he puts the hosts up early 1-0. 7 minutes later, the Revs work some magic from a throw down by the near side corner flag. Quickly worked swing on the field, saw Albert Rusnak dance past Donnarumma, and we had a tie game in the 15th minute. Game on. The pattern of a goal every 7 minutes continued as MLS journeyman Derek Etienne Jr. rocketed home his 7th goal of the season to give Atlanta the lead back 2-1. The 34th minute saw a mistake for Atlanta United as defender Luis Abram dragged down Rodrigo in the box, giving the Revs a chance to equalize before half. Surprisingly, Rusnak was given the chance and paid off that faith to give himself a brace and, more importantly for the Revs, a 2-2 tie heading into the break. The second half wasn't nearly as eventful, but the final minutes saw Zandi Silva breaking down the right wing with the ball eventually making its way back to Bartosz Slic, whose wayward shot was the best opportunity for either team in the second half. This brought us to penalties. In a winner-take-all fixture with the winner moving on to the official first round of the MLS Cup playoffs in a best-of-3 game series against the New York Red Bulls. Atlanta was the first team to blink as Simon denies Bartosz Slic in the third round of kicks to give the 9th place Revs the advantage. The Revs were clinical throughout, and Rodri with the 5th kick completed the perfect PK session for Pixelated Suits' traveling New England Revolution, who sneak into the first round of the playoffs, knocking off Liberty's Atlanta United. Our Eastern Conference field is set, as you can see on the right side of the graphic, but that still leaves our final winner-take-all wildcard fixture in the Western Conference. Brother Biz's Houston Dynamo hosts Super CJ Man St. Louis City SC. It's been refreshing to see a full bill of health for each team's designated players in these wildcard matchups. Roberto Martinez lines up the Dynamo in a 4-2-3-1, with Messi as the focal point in the middle, while Eddie Howe deploys his squad in a 4-3-3, with Bernardo Silva now available after coming back from injury that kept him out for the latter portion of the season for St. Louis. Houston's press caused St. Louis some immediate problems out of the gate as the Panamanian Coco Carrasquilla turned a wayward pass into some instant offense for the Dynamo. A reset by St. Louis after defending the first transition attack by Houston was turned over again, and Carrasquilla chose to do it himself, getting his laces through a right-footed strike that gave the Dynamo an early 1-0 lead. Houston timed a quick restart in the 45th minute to perfection, but an uncharacteristic Messi mishit kept the lead to just 1 as we went into the break. The second half was winding down and St. Louis City was pushing more players forward, fighting for that equalizer. A nearside corner found its way back to Alexis McAllister, who looped across to the back post that serendipitously bounced to the foot of Indiana Vasilev to equalize in the 83rd minute. The momentum was beginning to shift to St. Louis City in this one, but the 85th minute saw a flurry of chances for Houston, starting with a passing combination generating a whipped cross that Berkey was able to sniff out. Houston quickly won back possession and worked the ball up the right flank, with their key man Messi dropping into space to help facilitate the attack deeper in Houston's buildup. A quick switch of the field saw Messi bomb forward and find that pocket of space he always seems to find. A shot spins its way into the corner and the Dynamo bench erupt as Houston temporarily takes the lead, but the offside flag plays spoiler as we go to our second straight set of penalties in a wildcard game. First 3 penalties from each side were clinical, with the majority of key players from both sides being sprinkled amongst the takers, but it was Coco Carrasquilla with a confident Panenka attempt for Houston that put the Dynamo behind the 8 ball early. Nilsson for St. Louis City tucks home the final attempt for St. Louis City, and the Western Conference wildcard belongs to the boys from Missouri. Super CJ Man St. Louis City will take on Supporter Shield winners LAFC in round 1, while Brother Biz's side misses the playoffs by a single penalty in year 1. The owner-save MLS Cup playoff field is set. These 16 teams will go head-to-head head-to-head to determine the MLS Cup champion for Season 1. But let's quickly explain how that will work for anyone unfamiliar. Round 1 of the MLS Cup playoffs is a best-of-3 series. The higher seed will host the first game, and then have the right to host the third game if one is needed. The first team to win 2 games is the winner of the series itself, and there's no extra time and games go straight to penalties if there's a tie after 90 minutes. We will be joining the action after the first games take place, and we'll go over those results to see where things stand. Because, spoiler alert, some of these matchups do need to go into game number 3. Now what do you say? Should we get things started?
And here we go.
The Eastern Conference started out with a bang as only one higher seed was able to defend home field advantage in the first game. Adam Zero's FC Cincinnati fought off a stubborn DC United side on penalties to take the early round 1 lead, while Victor Yoyakorish gave Bad Smurfs at Nashville SC the series lead in Columbus. Supernova's Orlando City shocked CG Juan's Inter Miami in Game 1 as they jumped out to an early 2-0 lead that proved to be too much to overcome. And lastly, Pixelated Suits' Revs continued their wildcard momentum, upsetting top seed FM Tommy's New York Red Bulls 3-2 in Game 1. On the Western Conference side of things, the top seeds fared a little bit better. Ironman's top-seeded LAFC fended off a pesky St. Louis City team on penalties, while a mean San Jose Earthquakes controlled things with one of our more clinical first-game displays. Nami's Rapids handled FC Dallas, fueled by a Milinkovic Savage brace to give Colorado a 1-0 series advantage, and lastly, Corin Seattle Sounders absolutely thumped Marvelous Birch's Sporting Kansas City 4-1, taking a series advantage home in front of the Sounders faithful. 2 W's next to your team's name moves you on to the single elimination conference semifinals from here. Our featured match of Game 2 of the first round will be CG Juan's Inter Miami, who trail Supernova's Orlando City FC side. A loss will eliminate preseason favorite Inter Miami, who now will need to win their next 2 games to advance to the conference semifinals. Orlando City's season has already proven to be a success under the management of Massimiliano Allegri, as they hoisted the League's Cup trophy just a few months ago. Inter Miami remains optimistic as they undoubtedly have the deepest roster in the owner's save, with Suarez and Elba both available in addition to their added designated players Ruben Diaz, Diego Costa, and Federico Valverde. Orlando City fed off the energy of the home field advantage and had the majority of first half chances. They were finally able to break through just before the half as a pass from the back line dropped in between the defense and the Miami keeper as Marcus Rashford loops a chip over the outstretched keeper's arms to give Orlando the lead. Orlando City continued to dominate possession in the second half as they cycled a pass out to the right flank that made its way to a dangerous position on the byline. The Miami defender Kravitsov drags down Kikanovic, giving an opportunity for Orlando to double the lead. Rashford concisely tucks home his second of the day, and Miami's backs are officially up against the wall in this one. Time was running out for Miami, but in the 75th minute, Kremeshi was brought down in the box after some of the best attacking movement we had seen from Miami on the day. Suarez stepped up and smashed home a penalty to cut the lead to 1. Unfortunately for Miami, that was the only goal they could muster, as Orlando City, fueled by a Marcus Rashford brace, have eliminated the preseason favorite and third seeded in the East Miami in the first round of the MLS Cup playoffs. How did the other games fare around the MLS Cup playoffs? All 3 other series are going to the game number 3 in the Eastern Conference as DC United, Columbus, and the Red Bulls win Game 2. That brings us over for a check-in of the Western Conference. Our featured match of the day was Seattle hosting Sporting Kansas City. You might remember from the game summary we showed, Seattle thumped Kansas City in Game 1 4-1 on the road, and now have a chance to close out the series at home. The Sounders faithful will be loud in this one. An interesting matchup between these 2 roster builds is all 3 DPs for both sides are attacking selections, leaving MLS talent responsible for defending these world-class attackers. Naturally, with the script writing jinx, the entirety of the first half did not see a single highlight, and we joined the action in the 60th minute. SKC probes for an opportunity on the left flank that eventually sees Mbappe find Ivan Toney, who taps in the go-ahead goal to give Kansas City the lead on the road in the 60th minute. Kansas City's quick spring transitional attacks had clearly been scouted by Seattle going into this one, as the team constantly was building from the defensive line on restarts. Just 2 minutes removed from the go-ahead goal, and Seattle took possession off a re-entry from a goal kick. An 18-pass build-up proved to be one of the prettiest goals we have seen in the owner save, and after watching it myself a few times, it definitely deserved to be watched in its entirety, as designated player Gonzalo Ramos volleys home an equalizer to knot the game up at 1-1. Seattle's impressive slow burn build-out from the back had served them well through the game and allowed them to keep the blistering attacking pace of Kansas City at bay. That was until a turnover in the 78th minute replicated Kansas City's first goal, as Mbappe flew down the left flank, finding Ivan Toney for his second tap-in on the day to give SKC the lead. Kansas City was able to ice the game on a quick transition as Seattle started to throw numbers forward as they chased the extra goal they needed to equalize. A flicked-on header landed in no man's land for the Seattle defense, and Mbappe sprung into action, swiftly tucking away the third goal, needed to give SKC their first victory of the series. Other Game 2 results in the West looked like this. St. Louis City and Vancouver were able to bring their series to a game number 3, while Not Me's Colorado Rapids are the only Western Conference team to pull off a 2-game sweep to move on, disposing of Not Too Jakey's FC Dallas squad. The final match day of round 1 of the MLS Cup playoffs is upon us, and with 6 matchups going to a sudden death third match, all of those games will be played simultaneously. Our final featured match of the first round takes us to the Eastern Conference with Columbus and Big Man on Campus's crew taking on Bad Smurfs Nashville SC, with the winner moving on to the next round. This game got off to a quick start as the visitors took advantage of a corner kick opportunity in the second minute, with MLS Super Draft pick Wyatt Ohmsberg converting to give Nashville the early lead. Columbus answered quickly, as Steven Moreira received a finesse pass from Vinicius Jr. and rips a shot from 20 yards out to equalize. We had ourselves a goal fest in this one. Just a few minutes later, our third goal in just 10 minutes of play, as Nashville manages to sneak a pass through to the byline, and Daniel Lovitz's shot deflects off a Columbus defender to give the visitors the lead once again in the early back and forth. Columbus showed resilience throughout the first 20 minutes of this game, as a transitional attacking opportunity saw a rebound fall to the feet of Jamal Musiala, who checked in for his first goal of the game and 20th of the season. 2-2 going into the half in what has easily been our most entertaining featured match of the week of the playoffs thus far. The game slowed down a bit, and it took until the 73rd minute for any more fireworks, as Vinny Jr. worked a bit of combination from the sideline off a throw and found himself with some space in the middle of the field. He worked his way into the penalty area and beats Gregor Kobel to give the home team their first lead of the day. Columbus was trying to put an exclamation point on their performance in the 85th minute, and a recycled rebound from Matan's corner found its way to Jamal Musiala, who sealed the victory for the crew in the 85th minute. A hell of a performance from the crew, who trailed for large portions of the first half, but kept finding answers, finally grabbing momentum late and eliminating a very formidable Nashville team who already has a trophy to their name this season. The rest of the first round came to a conclusion with every result coming down to the wire. FC Cincinnati outlasted DC United to move on to the next round 1-0. While both 1 seeds disposed of the 9 seeds in penalties, huge efforts from both the Revs and St. Louis City SC, but neither one could pull off the big upset. Vancouver, on the other hand, continues to do well in a tournament setting as they come back and win 2 straight games to knock out the heavily favored San Jose Earthquakes. Lastly, Sporting Kansas City manages to overcome the horrific first game result against Seattle to move on to the Western Conference semifinal. Here's your matchups for round 2 of the MLS Cup playoffs. In the Western Conference, the 1-seed Ironman's LAFC will take on Marvelous Birch's Sporting Kansas City, while the 3-seed Not Me's Colorado Rapids will host our lowest seed remaining 7-seed Honey Badger FM's Vancouver Whitecaps. On the Eastern Conference side, the top seed FM Tommy's New York Red Bulls will host Big Man on Campus's Columbus Crew, while FC Cincinnati will host Cinderella side Supernovas Orlando City. LAFC versus Sporting Kansas City will be our Western Conference semifinal spotlight, as both teams have made it past the gauntlet of the first round. For those not familiar with the MLS Cup playoff system, from here on, all games will be hosted by the higher seed, and the format is shortened to single game elimination, and extra time does precede any penalty shootouts. LAFC hosts the Western Conference single elimination playoff as both Mourinho and Klopp line up their men in a mirrored 4-3-3 setup. The 27th minute was our first big chance of the match as Martin Odegaard sneaks through on the back post. Luis Diaz finds him with an opportunistic pass, and Odegaard makes no mistake to give the host the lead. We stick with the LAFC highlights in the 42nd minute, and it's a combination between the 3 LAFC designated players. Odegaard loops a perfect ball over the top to Luis Diaz. Diaz whips a pass across the 6, and notching his second assist of the day as Darwin Nunez gives the Supporter Shield champions the 2-0 lead going into the half. The second half saw a response from the visitors. Gabriel Martinelli cuts into the box, finds some space, and cannons a shot to cut the lead to just 1, 2-1 score. The 64th minute saw some momentum begin to shift. Leibold attempts to pass into the channel and finds Ivan Toney behind the defense, who lifts a shot just over the bar. The missed chance would prove to hurt Sporting Kansas City as just a minute later, a pass made its way to Darwin Nunez, who beats John Pulskamp one-on-one with ease to double the LAFC lead. The 73rd minute was the finishing move from the regular season champions. Oliveira whips in a cross to the far post, and Luis Diaz adds to his man of the match performance with a goal to go along with his 2 assists. Martinelli and the visitors tried their best, now down 3 goals with just 10 minutes to play, but they struggled to keep shots on net. Martinelli tried to add to his first goal, but a shot well over the bar was the final good chance of the day for Kansas City as they exited the competition at the Western Conference semifinal mark. LAFC will play host to Vancouver as the Whitecaps shock Colorado on the road. MLS veteran Fafa Picoult gave the visitors the early lead, and it was enough to send the Rapids home and keep the Vancouver Cinderella story alive. With just 2 teams remaining in the West, we jump over to our featured game of the Eastern Conference semifinals. FC Cincinnati hosts our other Cinderella story, Leagues Cup champion Orlando City. This game was one of 2 games on the day as the top-seeded Red Bulls played host to the Columbus Crew. Cincinnati deploys a 4-2-3-1, while Orlando City has continued their 5-3-2 that has proven very successful in a tournament setting. The 22nd minute saw Rashford drop into space and open up a gulf of space for Kikanovic, who had the keeper beat but smashes a shot off the post to keep us level for now. A minute later, Cincinnati saw left back Hakimi lift a lob cross to the back post that was put over the bar by U.S. international Matt Miazga. The 38th minute was a turnover from a poor clearance by Cincinnati that Orlando was able to turn into instant offense. Kikanovic found some space behind the back line that he turned into a cross that found Marcus Rashford for the early 1-0 advantage. The 44th minute was a chaotic opportunity off a corner that eventually saw Cincinnati shoot over the bar to go into the half trailing at home. A frustrating first half for the hosts in this one. The 59th minute, and Cincy was still searching for that opening goal. A turnover led to some time on the ball for Joseph Paintsill, who finds Jeremy Doku with his back to goal. A quick turn and first step gave Doku a great look at the net, but it wasn't to be, and the frustration of that first goal continues. The 67th minute was another turnover leading to an attack for Cincy. The ball eventually made its way to Jeremy Doku, who just gets a touch to the ball, poking it past the defense and giving Valenzuela a break to the net. Orlando City's Bracolo grabs Valenzuela and is sent off with a straight red card. Orlando City has to defend the lead with 10 men for the next 25 minutes. Despite the man advantage, that was the last highlight this game would show, and Pedro Galese records 5 saves to give Orlando City their ticket to the MLS Eastern Conference Finals. Elsewhere, the Red Bulls took care of business rather handedly to end Columbus's first season at the Eastern Conference semifinal mark. A good season and something to build on for the Crew, but they were outclassed in that final match by a very good Red Bulls team. Contributions from Saka and Isak gave the Eastern Conference 1 seed a chance to host a game that could see them move on to the MLS Cup. With just 4 teams remaining, let's take a look and see what our conference final matchups look like. We have both the top seeds in both the East and West still remaining. In the West, our Supporter Shield winners Ironman's LAFC squad host Honey Badger FM's Vancouver Whitecaps, while in the East, FM Tommy's New York Red Bulls host the tournament specialist Supernova's Orlando City squad. We will be following both our conference finals in their entirety, but first we start in the East, as the Red Bulls under the management of Diego Simeone line up in a 4-3-3 that features stars like Alexander Isak, Bukayo Saka, and John Stones, while Allegri's Orlando City we have become very familiar with in this save with their successes in the Leagues Cup, boasting their sturdy 5-3-2 that features Marcus Rashford, Alphonso Davies, and Virgil van Dijk. Our first highlight highlighted what we are used to with Orlando City, a turnover leading to a transition opportunity. Nico Ladero finds Marcus Rashford, who smacks a shot wide, but giving the away team some momentum to work with. Much of the same for Orlando in the 19th minute. A wall pass from Alphonso Davies allowed him space up the entirety of the wing and to the byline, choosing to try and sneak a shot instead of the safer back pass to a few teammates that were calling for the pass initially. A Nico Ladero effort in the 32nd minute is curled over the bar, but the chances were starting to pile up for Orlando. The 38th minute led to the first genuine chance for New York. Bit of midfield buildup found Alexander Isak in behind the defense on a time back shoulder run. Pedro Galese does well to stay in front of the shot and deflect it wide to keep the game scoreless into the break. The 55th minute was a chance for Kikanovic, but Cornell had the net covered as the striker sends the ball over the bar once again. The 76th minute finally brought an opportunity for the Red Bulls. Kyle Duncan took some space in front of the wingbacks and finds Isak between the center backs, who were just a step late to cover. Isak flips a shot towards the net, but the cheeky chip shot was snuffed out by Pedro Galese. This was followed by an 84th minute corner for the Red Bulls that was flung over the bar. As you can probably tell at this point, both teams were struggling to hit the target. The game became even more complicated in the 85th minute when Kyle Duncan was sent off for a tackle in his second yellow, taking down Marcus Rashford on the break. If the score remained tied, the Red Bulls had a full 30 minutes of extra time still to defend to get to penalties. With just 2 minutes of regulation remaining, the Red Bull supporters breathed a sigh of relief as a header glanced just wide and kept us scoreless as we approached the end of regulation. One last gasp for both teams as the Red Bulls had a late opportunity with a throw-in in Orlando territory. They were wasteful in possession and turned it over, resulting in Orlando's last chance in regulation. Orlando works through the middle of the field, but the quality of the shot was not going to be enough to beat Carlos Cornell, who wags a finger back and forth denying Orlando a late winner. The Red Bulls held through regulation and the game remained quiet through extra time with no highlights to share. That leads us to penalties, which shifts the momentum back into the Red Bulls' favor, defending for the past 30 minutes. An early Rashford miss set the tone for the string of penalty kicks for Orlando. The Red Bulls put the pressure on, making their first 2 kicks, and the pressure got to the Lions, who missed 3 of their 4 kicks, and their MLS Cup run sadly ends here. Carlos Cornell, your man of the match, with 5 saves in regulation and 3 in penalties to send New York Red Bulls to the Season 1 MLS Owner Save MLS Cup. But who would be the challenger out of the West, as the other matchup still has yet to be decided? Our Western Conference battle starts with Vancouver manager Antonio Conte and a 5-2-3. The Vancouver Whitecaps have thrived in a tournament setting, finding the end of a few of our competitions, but have no trophies to show for it as of yet. While LAFC have been the frontrunners this season, winning the Supporters Shield under Jose Mourinho, who deploys his lineup in the familiar 4-3-3. The game feels like a mirrored image to the matchup we just saw with a David versus Goliath style matchup. Are we on a collision course for a top seeded matchup in the MLS Cup, or does the Vancouver underdog story continue? Let's find out. The 16th minute, Vancouver cycled play through their backline from right to left. A ball played to the left flank found Adekugbe in stride, who brought it to the byline and eventually found DP striker Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who hesitated initially and just missed the target. Vancouver's early opportunity just misses the mark. The 29th minute was more Vancouver, as Fafa Picoult on the left flank drops into space and is able to rotate possession to the right. Some combination on the right ends up unlocking some space for Schaff, whose crafted cross finds the outstretching body of Calvert-Lewin, but he puts the chance just over the bar. The first highlighted chance for LAFC came off a set piece in the 43rd minute, as MLS All-Star Martin Odegaard whips in a cross that finds the head of Omar Campos to give LAFC an unexpected and out of nowhere 1-0 lead heading into halftime. You felt an immediate shift of momentum and pressure as LAFC turned the intensity dial up out of halftime. Their overeagerness on a set piece was penalized, however, as Dominic Calvert-Lewin intercepted a pass and found Alessandro Schaff in space to give the 7-seed Vancouver Whitecaps a share of the lead in the 51st minute. A well-worked run of play in the 65th minute eventually found the ball making its way to Christian Oliveira, who tried to pick out the far post but failed to get it past Allison. The field tilt was beginning to lean LAFC. Some more from Oliveira in the 69th minute, as he does well to keep the ball in the corner, with the ball eventually making its way to Martin Odegaard. A recycled opportunity after a rebound finds its way to Matisse Bogusz, who puts a shot just high. The 71st minute, a ball pinballs to the feet of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who carves out some space and just misses, tucking it inside the bar. The clock strikes midnight on regulation, and that brings us to extra time. A rather direct attack in the second half of extra time made its way to Palencia of LAFC, who on the right flank whipped in a great bit of service trying to pick out Darwin Nunez between 2 defenders. But he was unable to break the goal-scoring drought for the sides, and this led us to penalties for the second straight conference finals matchup. Penalties were a story of misses, as an early miss by Schaff put Vancouver behind the 8 ball early. LAFC's Timothy Tillman had a chance to clinch the game, but couldn't convert, and that kept the Caps alive. Pedro Vite converted to get the scoreline back level, but after an LAFC conversion and sudden death, Tristan Blackman's kick was parried away by Hugo Lloris, and LAFC breathes a sigh of relief as they get through to the MLS Cup final. Both Cinderella stories finish unresolved, as the 6 and 7 seeds are bounced from the competition, leading to our top 2 seeds going head-to-head for the MLS Cup to finish off Season 1. But now it's the moment you've all been waiting for. Who is going to be your MLS Cup champion in Season 1? Will it be your regular season Supporter Shield champion LAFC, who got here by the way of Martin Odegaard pulling the strings in the midfield and a high-octane attack led by Luis Diaz and Darwin Nunez? Or will it be the New York Red Bulls with Bukayo Saka, Alexander Isak, and John Stones leading the team that made a mid-season push in the East to take the top spot and never look back? There was a palpable buzz in BMO Stadium for the home team LAFC, as it hosted its second MLS Cup in club history. That buzz continued continued to the 22nd minute, which saw Christian Oliveira was a dangerous pass to the feet of Darwin Nunez. There was a scrum that ensued, but Nunez was able to get a toe to the ball, and the ball trickles over the line for an early 1-0 LAFC lead. Just 2 minutes later, and LAFC doubled that lead as Darwin Nunez created some space for himself in the box and smacked home a low line drive shot past Carlos Cornell. 42nd minute, and we had yet to get a Red Bulls highlight. Well, Lewis Morgan changed that with a bit of tenacity and determination after an LAFC turnover. Alex Isak found himself one-on-one with the keeper, but the ball went just wide, keeping the score 2-0. Just before the half, we had one final highlight as Palencia does his best to clear for LAFC. His clearance is intercepted by John Stones, who steps up and smacks an absolute thunderbolt of a shot to pull the Red Bulls back to 1 goal heading into the break. Out of halftime, the clear-cut chances belonged to LAFC, but Stone's goal really breathed new life into the match for the Red Bulls. They were able to parlay that momentum with a transition opportunity after some lackadaisical LAFC attack. The ball made its way to Alex Isak, and he calmly tucked away a finish to tie things up 2-2. Just moments later, LAFC shot up the right-hand side and Christian Oliveira found Darwin Nunez for what was sure to be a third goal, but Carlos Cornell comes up huge to keep the game level. The 63rd minute, the traveling supporters were starting to get behind the Red Bulls as Saka stood over a corner kick. A near-post header was redirected perfectly by Isak, who gives the Red Bulls an unbelievable 3-2 advantage after trailing by 2 to start the game. The 94th minute was the final chance for LAFC to equalize. Ødegaard stood over a free kick and attempted to play it short to the near side of the field. The Red Bulls are not fooled and clear it immediately. Palencia retrieves and plays it wide to Campos. Nealis slides and tackles it out of bounds. The final seconds now, do LAFC have an answer? Campos grabs the ball in a hurry. He'll have to be quick with the throw. The throw falls to L.A. Sanchez. It plays it back to Campos. LAFC works it around a little bit, makes its way back to Campos, who loops in a cross, and it's Carlos Cornell who is going to claim it. That just might be enough for the Red Bulls, as Cornell is going to hold it as long as the referee will allow. FM Tommy, the owner, is up watching in the stands as his team awaits for the final whistle. LAFC intercepts as their time for another play upfield. There is not. The MLS owner saves Season 1 champions, the New York Red Bulls. Congratulations to FM Tommy and the Red Bulls faithful. The Red Bulls win their first MLS Cup in franchise history behind goals from John Stones and a brace from the man of the match, Alexander Isak. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you your MLS Owner Save champions. FM Tommy and the Red Bulls showed resilience throughout the competition, having games go to penalties and overcoming deficits multiple times throughout the playoffs. The MLS Cup will make its way to New York, where I am told it will be displayed in FM Tommy's office for all to see. Well, there you have it, ladies and gents. An MLS season has come and gone, but before we go, why don't we review a few of the individual and team performances that stuck out over the course of the season. First things first, we now have a finalized look at our trophy winners that have been awarded throughout Season 1. Nashville, Orlando City, LAFC, and the New York Red Bulls were the first team to take home some hardware and will be added to the prestigious Bizarro Brigade Discord trophy room, enshrining their team's accomplishments from Season 1. With the playoff results final, we can also look ahead to Season 2. Our draft order for our world-class player draft is now set that will be broadcast live on my Twitch channel. Anders Rune will be the first pick with quite the list of players available. Players like Phil Foden, Victor Osimhen, and Leroy Sané highlight the list of world-class players that could be added before next season. The draft goes in order of how you finished in the supporters table, with the exception of the 2 MLS teams in the MLS Cup being moved to the very end. How could we leave without mentioning the summer of sackings one last time? It turned into a full-blown manager buzzsaw by the end of things, as 11 managers were either sacked or allowed to step down throughout the course of the season. These owners will be tasked with hiring a replacement manager as we head into Season 2. While we're in review, why don't we hand out our end-of-year accolades and awards to our teams that highlight some of the worst and some of the best the Owner Save had to offer. Let's start with some of the worst team performances. Montreal and Charlotte tied for having the most anemic offenses throughout the season, while Toronto and Minnesota shared the honor of the leakiest defenses. The best of the best was represented by LAFC on the offensive side of things, as they scored 59 times in the regular season, while FC Cincinnati was the team that showed the staunchest defense, allowing just 31 goals, less than 1 goal a game on average during the regular season. We had a tie for the Golden Boot, as Nashville's Erling Haaland and Toronto's Young-min Son led the league with 25 goals apiece to share the prestigious Owner Save Golden Boot in Season 1. Well, our top playmaker award goes to Martin Odegaard, who had an insane first season for LAFC. Over 100 key passes and tied for the league lead in assists was enough to fuel an LAFC Supporter Shield regular season victory and a second place finish in MLS Cup. Looking forward to what he brings in season 2. What about our unsung heroes, the non-world class players? These 4 players were the top 4 performers in their position that were not drafted by the team's owners. All 4 are players that have featured and played significant time in the MLS over the year. Well, that just about does it for us here, but before I go, I just wanted to make sure everyone knows what's on the horizon for future content stemming from the Owner's Save. Going forward, as we progress to season 2 of the Owner's Save, I have decided to release videos on a competition by competition basis to ensure that we are able to detail more about each team and the narratives that build throughout the season. Our first 2 videos will be a world-class draft recap video, and our first featured gameplay will be the Season 2 North American Champions Cup, as 9 of our owners vie for an NACC title and North American supremacy. If you have interest in following along, please be sure to like and subscribe as we look to build on the series from Season 1. Also, be sure to check out our Owner Save Discord, which has more in-depth information about the save, along with the save file posted so you can take control of your favorite team and play along as we progress through the seasons. Thank you all so much for watching, and I can't wait to get cracking on Season 2. My name is Bizarra, and this is the MLS Owner's Save.